Good morning, doctor. Welcome to the Mindful Practice podcast show. And the show is called the M Word, which is for menopause. And I searched high and low to find the perfect person to speak to. Thank you so much for availing yourself to come and speak to me today.
It's an absolute pleasure.
I consulted my own gynecologist, but he's male, and I really felt in my heart that I needed to speak to a female gynecologist, somebody that understands menopause from the point of view they've experienced it, which is, I believe, a very different conversation. And I'm 50 now and I'm experiencing it. And this has forced me to go and research a lot of information out there about this because it's a topic that is so important. It's going to affect half the people on the planet, the females. And also, the males are also affected because they live with the females and they don't necessarily understand what's going on with the female's body and why they're changing. And so it really impacts everyone because whether you're
Yeah.
male, your daughter's going to go through it, your mother has probably gone through it, and your sister will go through it too. So it impacts everyone. And therefore, I just feel this is an important conversation. So, as an introduction, I know that you're resident at Vincent Pallotti Hospital, but please tell me who you are and how you found yourself in medicine.
It goes back a long time. I won't tell you exactly how long.
That's fine.
Right. After school, I actually didn't know what I wanted to do at all. So I actually started doing BSc because I was interested actually in biology and zoology, believe it or not.
Ah, okay.
So I started with the BSc and it wasn't quite to my liking. And in my days, you
Mm,
could move from a BSc to medicine, from the first year to the second. So that's what I did.
okay.
And I did do my 6 years of course, medicine. And
Mm,
in my days, we only had to do one internship. These days, they have to do 3 years.
right.
But then I found myself at a loss again because, okay, fine, now I'm a doctor, and now what?
Mm,
So I sort of traveled around a bit. I went and did some anesthetics at what was then called Baragwanath Hospital, now Chris Hani.
right.
I did some anesthetics there, etc. And through the anesthetics, I actually met the obstetricians because I had to do all the epidurals for
Yes.
them.
Right.
And then they said to me, why don't you just come and be a medical officer in obstet and gynae? I
Mm,
said, well, no, why not? And that was actually in Johannesburg then,
mm,
obviously. And I started doing that and I actually started developing a passion for it
right.
for various reasons. Well, you know what? Everyone who does obstetrics initially gets a passion for it.
Mm,
But I actually love surgery. So I then decided to specialize, but I didn't want to stay in Johannesburg. So I moved back to Cape Town
okay.
and I started specializing here. And then my mentor or my professor was actually a gynae oncologist.
Mm,
In those days, you didn't have to write, which means gynecological cancer. You don't have to write exams for that in those days. These
mm,
days, you have to. And so I actually moved into the field of gynae oncology because it included a lot of very big surgery, which I loved.
ah.
And I am still a gynae oncologist, but you
Mm,
can't survive on gynae oncology. So I was at Grootersky Hospital until 1991. I was a consultant there.
mm,
And that was not just in gynaecology, that was just training all the registrars on various levels, whether that's being
okay.
menopause or surgery or whatever. And then I went into private practice at
Mm,
Vincent Pallotti, not doing obstetrics at all. I never delivered babies in private practice since 1991. And then, so I'm consulting there. I do see some cancer, but I see all sorts. I mean, whether it's from oral contraceptive advice to menopausal
okay.
advice to
All right.
surgery to prolapse to whatever. I want to add that I
Sure.
did work for 25 years. I
Mhm,
did a small clinic at Red Cross Children's Hospital. So by default,
mm.
I'm sort of the only pediatric gynecologist in South Africa. Yeah.
Really? Oh, what an
Yeah.
honor to have you. You have a long legacy, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
It's such a long career. You've seen many, many female patients, and I think if we can start to give women just sort of a broad overview of the stages of menopause, because as I understand, menopause is a point in time, but there is a stage to it from when you start ovulating to when you stop. So could you talk through the pre, the peri, the menopause, the post? Could you explain what that stages are?
I'll just quickly talk about puberty because it's
Yeah,
this puberty that it starts all,
that's right.
because before puberty, nothing is developed really. At
Mm.
puberty, cycling starts. Cycling meaning there is ovulation happening. Ovulation happens in the middle of the month. So in other words, about 2 weeks after your previous menstruation happened, at the same time in those 2 weeks, there is a follicle, which is a little cyst that develops in your ovary. And on week 2, there is like what we call an estrogen surge in your hormonal setup. And that sparks the release of an egg. Once the egg, here comes the absolute magic. Once the egg has been released, that same little cyst or follicle produces a different hormone. So the
Mm.
same follicle produces before estrogen, afterwards progesterone, and then if no pregnancy happens, everything drops. And because of the drop, the uterus responds by menstruating. So the
Oh.
uterus sits there only responding to the giving and taking of hormones. So it's like being going on the pill. You give the pill, you take your placebos or your sugar pills, you'll menstruate. So the uterus doesn't do anything, just responds to the hormonal
Mm.
ups and downs.
Okay.
So you go through your reproductive phase, and then it differs for all women. Everyone has their own clock set for menopause. I mean, unless we are making it surgical, in which case we remove the ovaries for whatever reason, then
Yeah.
you go in acute menopause. But menopause is actually meaning the stopping of menses. So why does that happen? Well, that happens because the level of hormones actually drop.
Mm.
Okay, so initially there is skipping of ovulation, usually,
Mm. Mm.
but still menstruation, but that may
Mm.
become irregular because
Yeah.
it's now only estrogen that's being produced. So there's no progesterone because there hasn't been ovulation.
Ah.
So the menstruation may happen a bit later, or you may skip a
Yeah.
menstruation.
Would that be perimenopause?
That would be caused perimenopause.
Oh.
And, peri is a big word. I mean, peri can be a small circle or a
Mm.
big circle. So some people don't go through the menopause. Some people menstruate, boom, stop, and never menstruate again. And
Really?
some people peter, yeah, and some
Wow.
people peter. And
But
then,
when you're in peri, you can start showing symptoms, right?
yes, your symptoms will appear when your
Mm.
estrogen level is lower. Okay, so it all depends on your estrogen level because we have a
Mm.
feedback to our pituitary hormone.
Mm.
Pituitary hormones
In your
are
brain.
called
Yeah.
FSH, LH, which stick, the pituitary hormone is there, and
Mm.
it's a negative feedback. In other words, if the pituitary hormone doesn't get enough estrogen signals,
Yeah.
it will start putting out more stimulating hormones. Say, come on, ovaries, come on.
Ah.
Let the estrogen, but if there isn't,
Yeah.
if the ovaries have had their time, it's not like we run out of eggs. We got millions of eggs on each side. It's not running out of eggs.
Mm.
It's basically the ovaries have their set limit of time that they're going to work.
Mm.
And if that stimulus doesn't come to the pituitary, those hormones increase. And then what happens there? That sits next to the thermostat in our
Yeah.
pituitary. So it gets a bit confused in there. So
Ah.
you're starting to get hot
Hot
flashes.
flashes. Ah. There's a definite link between the ovaries and the brain's signals,
The
clearly.
pituitary, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's a
Yeah.
negative feedback.
Which
Yeah.
also then explains the brain fog, which is a common symptom, correct?
It's got nothing to do with the pituitary,
No, no, but
but
the fact
yeah,
that the
the
brain
brain
talks to
fog,
the ovaries, yeah.
the brain fog doesn't happen to everyone. It
Mm.
doesn't happen to everyone. I think the most common sign of menopause, two common signs of menopause or perimenopause
Yeah.
is flushes and insomnia.
I've had both.
Yeah.
And the brain fog. The insomnia is what hit me really hard because now my day is affected with the
Yeah.
sleep, the lack of sleep. It feels like you're having have a little infant baby to look after, like you're just waking up for no reason in the middle of the night. That is what really hit me hard, and I came out of uh Christmas and I looked at my my tummy and I thought, oh my God, did I really explode over Christmas? Why do I have so much belly fat? I couldn't explain it until I figured out that this was another symptom that you develop the belly fat. So how do you explain that part of your anatomy to do with
Okay.
menopause?
So that happens to men too, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've noticed, but around 50, 60, they definitely also have belly fat. So what happens is not necessarily an estrogen effect, but it all, do remember
It's all
that
linked.
aging and menopause happen at the same time.
Correct.
So what happens is that it's a redistribution of fat. In other
Mm,
words,
mm.
instead of having the fat on the legs, the arms, etc., it actually redistributes around the abdomen.
Belly.
And that's a common thing, and it's also an age thing. It's not necessarily related to the estrogen.
But it's just a signal that you need to now start prioritizing lifestyle changes, dietary changes, and all of that in order to limit the risk of your health, right? It's a good stage to
Yeah,
start.
I've got a different answer to you.
Okay,
Everyone should do it right from the beginning of their life. Then you
that's
don't
right.
have to change your
That's
lifestyle and stuff. You know,
100%.
don't wait until you're
Mm,
in the menopause and then you start jogging and gymming and
doing
16-hour
all these things.
fasting.
Yeah,
Yeah. So ideally, I mean, even in school, children should be taught lifestyle and healthy lifestyle,
absolutely.
exercise, intake, etc. Yeah. Work starts and there's no time, and their kids, etc., etc.
Mm,
So you
mm.
land that suddenly, oh my word,
You're
what's
in
happened
your
to my body?
40s, in your 50s, and this is now
Yeah.
where you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you raise a good point. I don't remember learning. I mean, we were at school a long time ago, but I don't remember learning about the effects of menopause on the body and why the nutrition and the diet now becomes so important because
Oh,
your system is disrupted by the drop in hormones, estrogen, for
Did you
example.
even learn about nutrition and the value of nutrition and exercise in school at all? I didn't.
Fruit and vegetables is all I can remember.
But
Um,
that may have been at home. Yeah.
I don't, yeah, that's so there is such a lack in the system
Yeah.
and the fact that this will affect you directly and you think you're going crazy. You're not going crazy. It's the body's transitioning. But there is a
Yeah.
lot of things you can do to support the body. So I want doctor to talk to that because we touched on nutrition and lifestyle changes, but what are the other things women can tap into on this journey of menopause?
Is what you are doing is to basically educate yourself on what
That's
is
right.
happening to the body because people do not know. Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
I've just explained it all, but people do not know what's happening. They just, say, okay, fine, something is changing. I don't know what's
Yeah.
changing. People sometimes think, okay, I would say I have to remove your ovaries. Oh my word! Then they say, will I have more estrogen? I mean, people have no
Mm,
idea of actually how the body
mm,
works. So the most important thing I think is to empower women. I mean, even young women need
that's
to
right.
empower yourself about what's going on with their body right now
Yeah.
and what is going to
To
go on with their
happen.
body
Yeah.
with the perimenopause and the menopause. I always say to people, listen, menopause is not a sickness. It is not an illness. It is the natural progression
Action.
of
Yeah.
us.
That's right. There is still stigma attached to that for some reason. I'm not sure how it developed.
Together with the changes in the late 40s, 50s, and
Mm.
as you call it, the brain fog, there's also a little bit of irritability happening, a
Mood
little bit
swings.
of,
Yeah.
mood swings and stuff like that, which we have, by the way, the puberty is the exact same, but the
Yes.
reverse of menopause. So you look
Ah,
at so they also go through, and then it evens up.
Doctor, during puberty, the
Start,
hormone levels increase. During
yeah,
menopause, they drop.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Ah, get it.
So what happens is that when you're going through the sort of perimenopause to menopause, once you're in menopause, you know where you stand, because then you will be even keeling. It's that transition which is difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
Menopause, after the menopause, now you either have hot flushes, don't have hot flushes, you either sleep well, you don't sleep well, but it's even keel. It doesn't change because
Okay.
your hormones are now
The
flatlining.
roller coaster ride is over
The
post
roller coaster ride is
menopause.
before the
Ah,
menopause. Yeah.
okay, I get it. That doesn't take away the fact that your levels of estrogen will drop significantly after the menopause has hit you
Well,
or post
that's
menopause.
what I'm saying. In the perimenopause, I always explain it. It's like an elastic band. You
Right.
get a bit, and then some gets taken away, and you get a bit, and you let it go. So
Mm,
that's the perimenopause. More difficult time in a woman's life than the
sure.
menopause,
Yeah.
because the menopause, you know where you stand, but in the perimenopause, you don't. There's a
Mm,
hair growing here, a hair growing here.
mm.
Today you're feeling great, tomorrow you're moody. That's the perimenopause.
And how long does that roller coaster last, on average for women?
Different. That's very, very difficult to say, because some women don't go through it at all.
Mm,
And for some women, they can start at age 45, 46, and last for about 5 years. So
right.
it's, no two people are,
The
typical to
same.
women, no two
Absolutely.
women are the same. Yeah.
No, absolutely. I did read that the definition of menopause is 12 months after you've had no cycle. That is like your
Six.
menopause day.
It's actually six.
6 months?
No, six. So if you haven't had period for 6 months, say for instance,
Ah,
and you had have a bleed, then you have to have it investigated.
mm,
So the
okay,
definition of menopause is menopause actually means stopping menstruation, but
sure.
stopping menstruation can happen in the perimenopause, because that you can stop menstruating for 3 months and then menstruate again. But if
Mm,
it's been 6 months and longer, then the
okay,
definition is that's the
okay,
menopause.
because
Yeah,
there's a pause. There's a pause. What does meno mean?
but stop
Uh,
menses,
what does that mean?
menstruation.
Ah, okay.
Menses, menstruation comes from
Menses.
the Greek
Okay.
word. Yeah,
I see. Okay, okay. All right. So what else can women do, doctor, to combat this hormonal imbalance that's happening?
lifestyle,
Mm.
informing yourself, and then depending on the symptoms, there is medication to help you with the symptoms,
Yeah.
and that's called hormone replacement therapy.
Is there a more natural route also for over the counter?
If you have very mild symptoms, you can go for the plant estrogens, which is the wild yam, the
Mm,
black cohosh, all those kind of things.
yeah,
And
that's
but
me.
that will only, oh yeah, that will only really help with mild
Mild.
symptoms.
Okay, yeah.
Once you have, if you have severe menopausal symptoms,
Mm,
I don't think you'll get away with the natural
okay, okay.
route.
Because I'm peri, I have started this routine of where I'm doing
Yeah,
a brain food complex and I'm doing a sleep food complex, which is a capsule. And I'm upping my vitamin D and doing some gut health with vitamin B. And it's been 2.5 weeks and I really feel better. Um,
so what you're
it's
talking to me is, I would love to hear how much you pay for all
um, all in
that.
all, a
It's
thousand
not cheap.
rand.
Yeah, well,
Probably.
that's not cheap for the general population. I'm just painting a picture for all of us, not just
Yeah,
for us who
but that's
can
actually what
afford it.
my gynae also said. Like
Yeah.
the medicine over the counter compared to HRT is almost similar to some degree, depending on, how much you invest in it.
Just a little thing.
Mm,
20 minutes in the sun without protection, sun
yeah,
protection, 20 minutes
yeah,
gives you the
same
same what you're
level
taking by mouth.
for vitamin D. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
I do feel a little bit clearer and I'm sleeping better. That was the main thing for
yeah.
me. On and off days, but generally better. And I just feel I still have the mood swings. Like when I drive, I get really irritated on the road. So
Do
that's
you
an
take magnesium?
indication. Yes. So
Yeah,
magnesium is
because
also,
magnesium is the nerve calming drug.
oh, really? Yeah.
I'm not a promoter of having a box full of, a
Mm.
thousand to 2,000 rands supplements to try and get through life. A lot of it you can do
Yeah.
with sunlight, eating the right foods,
Yeah.
etc.,
I know.
exercising and so
Yeah,
on.
yeah.
Because not everyone can really afford a
Afford
thousand
that.
rand to, yeah,
No, 100%. And I do try the walking as often as I
yeah,
can, which is really good for me. I'm actually starting to look forward to it now because I'm not a gym
mm,
person necessarily. So the walking for me is a quick win. But it really
yeah,
requires a lifestyle change. And
yeah,
that's why I'm doing the podcast, really to tell women it's not a jail sentence, you're not going crazy, and it just requires a bit of educating yourself. And if it's really severe, to go and see your a professional, your gynecologist.
yeah. So do remember that you have to separate the perimenopause from the menopause. Because
Mm.
if you're in the perimenopause, you still have estrogen floating around. So
Hmm.
that's where you are. And that's where most women develop quite severe hot flashes. Now, do remember,
Mm.
we're talking about the flashes, but there are a lot of other things that happen when you lose your estrogen.
That's right. So let's talk about
Yeah,
that.
you talk the flashes and the
Mm.
insomnia, etc. But your bone health. Okay,
That's right.
so what happens when you don't have estrogen? Estrogen is our biggest and best bone builder we have.
Mm.
If we lose it, osteopenia, bone loss starts happening, and we can land up with osteoporosis. So you
Mm.
have to take note of that. So when you go through the menopause, it's very good to have a baseline bone density done so that you can work on that.
Okay. Where do you
And
do that,
working on
doctor?
that, it's an X-ray department. And
Ah,
it's a baseline, and for often when we see people doing the baseline, they already lost half their bone mass.
really?
So estrogen is our best bone builder. So if we see people with bad bones,
Mm.
and I think, you know what, the one thing is treating your hot flashes, but you could go with your hot flashes, go and buy as many pills as you like. But what are we going to do about your bone?
Yeah.
That's a very good motivator to
Mm.
go on hormone replacement therapy, which has estrogen in it. I
Mm.
mean, which has estrogen in it together with the progesterone. We can talk about that
Yeah.
just now. But the estrogen is our bone builder. So
Right.
you could do a bone density test 2 years after you started taking estrogen. Guaranteed your bones will be stronger
Mm. But that's only with the HRT, hormone replacement therapy.
with
The,
estrogen. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
The estrogen helps and the vitamin D helps the calcium and magnesium pump into the bones.
Bones. Wow.
Secondly, when we lose our estrogen, we go in the same category as men for heart attacks.
Wow.
So you don't ever see somebody standing in front of a bed of a woman who's had a heart attack and say, shame, she didn't take her estrogen. But you do say to a woman who has breast cancer that may have nothing to do with the estrogen,
Mm.
oh, it's because of your estrogen. You know what I'm saying?
Wow. Yeah.
So the lack of estrogen doesn't get talked about.
Right. And it's so severe. And
It is.
part of what I've learned is one way to combat that is to strengthen your muscles and to do muscle strength training in terms of because the muscles protect the bones.
You don't just consist of a skeleton. You know, you have your ligaments, you have your muscles, and etc. So exercising is very important, strengthening your muscles,
Mm, mm.
but that doesn't do anything to your bones.
To your
So
bones, yeah.
one of the very often ignored reasons of death of older people, and I'm talking over 85, 90,
Yeah.
is they have a fall, break their hip or their femur, they land up in hospital, they
Mm,
get pneumonia, they die. So people
mm.
don't
Make the
correlate
link, yeah.
bone density with death, but it does cause death.
Yeah, yeah. I've
So
heard.
I am a very much a promoter of at least taking a minimum of 5 years of estrogen after your menopause. So to
Mm,
protect your heart, to
mm.
protect your bones,
Yeah.
to get rid of your brain fog, if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
I read once you have a fall because of the drop in estrogen and your bones are now brittle, it's very often downhill from there. Within a year,
Yeah.
things go
Well, when you're
drastically
old,
wrong.
when you're old, I
When
mean,
you
because these days
now,
we can replace all sorts of
mm,
joints, but when you are, I'm talking about, these days people get old. So when you're
Yeah,
85, you fall, you break your
will
hip,
live
you break your
longer.
femur neck, and hospitals are not very friendly environments. So you get bugs there, you get sick, and then you never come out of hospital.
True, true. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, doctor, this has been really enlightening. And I can't wait to put this out. I just want to thank you for the good work that you do, for dedicating your life to serving others. And I appreciate your knowledge, your expertise, and your approach on menopause.
A very big pleasure. Thank you for asking me to share this.
It was a pleasure of mine too. I will have great pleasure in sending this link to others and continue the conversation to empower others. Thank you, doctor. Keep well.
Thank you very much.